Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahi wa kafa wa salamun ala ibadihi alladhina istafa. Amma ba'd. Respected brothers and all those listening. Yesterday we had a brief look at CMC or CMSC, Central Moonsighting Committee of Great Britain, which was formed around 86, 87. And I also showed you a copy of their monthly timetable which they publish. Just a point on that. CMC, to give credibility to their stance and to their adopted criteria of following Saudi Arabia, they normally quote Mufti Taqi Sahib. Mufti Taqi Uthmani, Hafizahullah, senior Mufti, one of the senior Muftis of the world actually, they quote him. However, if you carefully analyze the fatwa of Mufti Taqi Sahib, I'm just mentioning this briefly so it's in your knowledge. If you carefully analyze the fatwa of Mufti Taqi Sahib, you will quickly come to a conclusion where he clearly states that not following Saudi Arabia is more, and the word he uses is ahwat. They use this in Urdu as well, it's an Arabic word as well. Ahwat, for those of you who are well versed with Arabic, is a ismut tafdeel. Ahwat, there's more precaution in not following Saudi Arabia. So I thought I'll just briefly mention this, otherwise you can read up on Mufti Taqi Sahib's fatwa and his stance, etc. in more detail. However, at the same time, Mufti Taqi Sahib at times, he's also said, for the sake of unity, even he has said for the sake of unity and to stop people clashing, try to come onto one criteria. But in reality, as I've mentioned before, that using unity as a benchmark and to use it to have one criteria, and that criteria has flaws inside it, then that's not acceptable. That's the bottom line. I also mentioned yesterday that what should we be doing in the UK? So I mentioned the criteria of Wifaqul Ulama. You can go on their website. There's a lot of information on there, etc., all in English. And the criteria was that you have local sighting plus a designated zone. And I explained that yesterday. What I want to mention today is that several small fringe groups have emerged in the last maybe 3-4 years, maximum 5 years. Mainly, mashallah, youngsters, young people, young blood. And they have been advocating local sighting only. Local sighting only. Whereas the Wifaqul Ulama criteria is local sighting plus a designated zone. Now, adopting a criteria of just local sighting is problematic. It's problematic. Why? If you can't see the moon for 3-4 months in a row, you're going to end up with 3-4 months of 30 days. So there's problems. Okay? Now, what I want to highlight is they have adopted this criteria, these 2-3 groups which have emerged recently. They feel that this is kind of, quote unquote, lesser of the two evils. Meaning, for Saudi followers to do a U-turn and to back down, it's easier for them to back down if they came onto this criteria of local sighting only. Because what are you moving out of the equation? Come on. Morocco. At the moment, if you look at the Saudi followers, and also, we can't really say Morocco followers because we've got local sighting and designated zone, and Morocco is one of the chief countries. But let's just put it in that context, in that manner, that if you take Saudi Morocco, this has become a byword for, clashes and hostility. It's a bit like saying, Manchester United and Liverpool, the rivalry. if you want to describe rivalry, Man U Liverpool type rivalry. So Saudi Morocco, it can be even described as a byword for severe rivalry. So this group, these one or two groups, they feel that if we have this criteria, local sighting only, it's easier for the Saudi followers to do a U-turn. However, the hierarchy of CMC, the ulama at the top of Central Moonsighting Committee, believe me, whether you have local sighting or not, they're not going to do a U-turn. And they've made that very clear. They have made that very clear in their statements, in their communication. So nothing really is going to change. My question now is to you, how is change going to come about? It's going to come about through you, through individuals. That's how change will come about. People power. I'll give you a good example of that. The Salah issue in Preston, Fajr, Isha in particular, it's basically, debates and discussions started around 2006 and 7, but the masajid, they failed to take any action. However, on the other hand, many individuals, they individually adopted the Salah timings, Isha and Fajr, basically, which are based on the astronomical depression of 18 degrees for Fajr. So many people adopted this individually, to the extent that around, I think, 2017, one or two brothers, they got the masajid together, and most of the masajid in Preston, except one or two, they changed the Isha time. Okay, they changed the Isha time. That's why, you're seeing a difference now, especially in this month, that there is a big gap between Maghrib and Isha. There is a big gap, quite a big gap compared to previous years. So they changed Isha. However, the issue of Fajr, the far more important issue, is still hanging, because Fajr is connected to our Sahri. Fajr beginning time is Sahri end time. That's when we stop fasting. So the more important issue is still hanging. So point I want to make is that if we are going to wait for the mashayikh and for the senior scholars and for the masjid committees and for LCM and MCB, believe me, that day is not going to come. Change will only come when we as individuals, we adopt the criteria, the correct criteria ourselves. Now, something else is that it's not easy. When you've got family and you're doing Eid together, and normally 2-3 families get together for Eid, etc., it's not easy. I'll give you my own example. At one point, a few years ago, I was the only person in the house who was doing Eid on a different day. Do you understand? And I did not force anyone in my immediate household, including my wife, etc., to adopt the criteria I had adopted. Then they slowly just changed themselves. And then my younger brother, he also changed as well after 2-3 years, because I was not going to change. First, it was very difficult. It is difficult. And in Preston now, mashallah, you've got nothing to worry about. You've got, mashallah, the Sufa Institute where you can perform your Eid Salah. Before, this was a problem. And I'd just like to tell you something else as well. This year, one masjid in Preston has changed. Do you know which one it is? One masjid, it's not one of the big ones, so don't say those names, okay? Yeah, that's a bit like pigs will fly, okay? One masjid in Preston this year, the start of Ramadan, they changed, meaning they did not do their first Taraweeh on Friday night, they did it on Saturday night, Sunday was their first fast. Does anybody know which mosque it is? City Mosque, yes. I actually sent them a congratulatory message that, I can understand it would have been very challenging. It would not have been easy, even though it's a small masjid. Even though it's a small masjid, it would have still been challenging because, in the committee you have 8, 9, 10 people, all different corporates. To convince everyone, it's very difficult. And also, City Mosque is a masjid that generally is looked upon as a masjid that aligns itself with Saudi Arabia. So for them to make this change, wallahi, it shows their sincerity, that they want to follow the correct criteria. They want to follow the correct criteria. Obviously, what you've got to also appreciate is that, the smaller masajid, generally, they make the big masajid into an excuse. That we're just a small masjid, and when the big ones will change, we will just follow. That's what they used to say in the salah issue as well. However, on the other hand, for a smaller masjid to change, it's far easier. There's less musallis, less congregation, less maghazmari, less headaches basically. If you've got bigger masajid, there's obviously bigger issues, more people, more congregation, more basically dhamaliyas to deal with basically. So, like I said, I thought it's important to mention that, mashallah, City Mosque this year, they change, and I hope that they stay steadfast on this decision of theirs. The other thing is that I mentioned that how is change going to come? It's going to come from you. When you guys start changing, and when on Eid day the numbers start dropping, and when their chanda reduces, that's when the masjid committees will think we need to do something. Okay, munde to goli maro, but chanda is more important. So when they see the numbers dropping, believe me, they will be forced to take action. I shouldn't put it this way, but believe me, we've got to live with reality. We've got to live with reality. Committees of our masajid, they usually like politicians, very reactive. Politicians, they react to the public mood. Come on, what's the example of this week? Who can give me an example of this week from the UK? A classical example of politicians reacting to the public mood. Come on. Excellent. Yes, our Rishi. Basically, first, if you look at the entire sequence of events, what did he first say? That don't smear my wife to get to me. Proper emotional blackmail, emotional stuff. Yeah? Don't look into my wife's tax affairs and her non-dom status, etc., to get to me. So he tried to portray the issue as my political opponents, to get to me, they are smearing my dear good wife, whatever her name is. What is it, Mrs. Murti or whatever? Murti, I don't know how you would say in Indian. English is Murti. Okay, certainly not Murti in Indian. Murti hai kai, right? And then, basically, after 24 hours, we've been paying all our taxes and we have not broken the law. And really, they had not. If you look at it from a technical point of view, they had not broken the law. But what you've got to appreciate, the bigger picture is that Joe Bloggs, down the road, he doesn't care whether the law is broken or not. If somebody is living in 11 Downing Street, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and his own wife has got non-dom status, and then you find out that she's saving 10-20 million pounds in taxes, okay? Not income, 10-20 million in taxes, that's not going to go down well with Joe Bloggs. That's not going to go down with him. So then what did Rishi and family do? They did a complete U-turn, that we're going to start paying taxes in the UK, forget our non-dom status, because of the public mood. This is how politicians are. They are reactive to the public mood. All these COVID restrictions, why did they quickly disappear for? When Boris Johnson saw that I'm in hot water, okay, what did he do? He thought the best way to get out of this is, let's start easing all the COVID restrictions. Let's get rid of social distancing, masks, travel restrictions, PCR, this, that, and the other. And did you see, fatafat daradham, one after the other, he got rid of them, just to save his own skin. So this is how our masjid committee members are as well, unfortunately, that they are reactive to public perception and public mood, because they need your votes at the next AGM. Moving on, I just wanted to discuss this coming Eid, okay? And then inshallah we will call it a day. It's Tuesday today. Basically, Eid, like I told you, for Saudi Arabia is a foregone conclusion. What day is it on? Come on, I've told you. Monday, okay? Monday. So first thing what you've got to appreciate is that we've got, I'm losing track of my days, Friday, what day is Friday? Is it 30th April? So Friday is 30th. Saturday, is that first? No? No, Friday is first. Come on, guys. Who's got their phone with them? Sunday is 1st May. Okay, let's get our bearings right. So, what you've got to appreciate is that you need to look at the data for Saturday and Sunday. And remember, we are using data and calculations not for the basis of declaring Eid. We are using it to counter false citing claims and misinformation. So what you've got to appreciate is, you might have seen this. I don't know if you've ever seen this graph, moonsighting.com. Khalid Shaukat, he's an engineer and very well versed in moon sighting, mashallah, based in America. And he's been doing this for years. You know, when I say years, I mean 30 years or more, maybe even more. I've known him for 25 years, so it must be more than that, 35, 40 years. He's in his late 70s, I think now. Okay, so if you look at Sunday evening, remember, to do Eid on Monday, you need to sight the Hilal on Sunday. If you look here, just to give you an idea, for those of you who can't see from the back, this is the African continent, this is South America, this is North America. So, just to get your bearings, Australia's here, all your India, everything is here. So if you look at the green zone, that basically refers to easily visible with the naked eye. So where is it going to be easily visible? In some parts of America and Canada. So for them to do Eid on Monday is no issue. We can't do Eid with them, because by the time they will sight the moon, according to the time zone, what time will it be here? Come on, America, Canada, how many hours are they ahead of us? A good what? No, not 4, 5, more than that. Yeah, especially this, when you move towards more towards the west, even more, basically. So basically, for them to do Eid on Monday, there is no issue. Sumu li ru'yatihi wa aftiru li ru'yatihi. They can do Eid according to their sighting, and they will be acting upon the hadith as well. Okay, and what you've got to appreciate here is, you can't have Eid for the whole world on one day. It's a rare event, if not usually impossible. There'll always be 2 Eids for the entire world, and there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. Sharia does not say that you've got to have Eid on one day. Sharia does not say that. Now, if you look at the blue bit, it says visible if perfect conditions. And this is where sumu li ru'yatihi wa aftiru li ru'yatihi comes, and it trumps calculations. If you look at this very carefully, it covers a part of North Africa, which is where Morocco is. Basically, listen to this very carefully. There is a slight chance, okay, when I say slight, the reason is, I told you a few days ago that the moon's got to be at least 10 degrees, okay? In Morocco, on that day, the moon is at 9 degrees, okay? It's at 9 degrees. It's difficult to sight the moon at 9 degrees, but we're not saying it's absolutely impossible. So there is a slight chance that we could have a united Eid if the moon is sighted in Morocco on that day. The atmosphere will have to be absolutely perfect. It would have to be absolutely perfect for them to sight a 9 degrees moon. I mentioned to you last time that it's the glare of the sun that basically blinds out the moon, and we can't see it. Remember, the moon doesn't have its own, light. It's the sun that gives it light, basically. The sun throws its rays on the moon, and that's how the moon is illuminated. So there is a slight possibility. And this is a classical example where, if in Morocco, they sight the moon, calculations say it's 9 degrees. It's difficult. But if they sight the moon, we will accept that sighting. We will leave our calculations to one side, because we know there is a possibility. We know there is a possibility, even though it's remote and conditions will have to be perfect, etc. That's why it's important to have a reliable source. And I told you, Morocco is a reliable source. And ulama from the UK over the last 20 years on several occasions have been to Morocco, and they've accompanied these Hilal sighting groups on numerous occasions to see what type of system they have. What type of procedures and policies they've got in place. And it's very robust in Morocco. Very robust. Because, you got to understand that Morocco, first of all, they adhere to the Maliki school of fiqh, and a lot of conservative Muslims there as well. I know the only part of Morocco we know is, what's that place called? Agadir. That's the one. That's the only place we know. Jahan sab naachne gaane ke liye jate hai. The Sharm el-Sheikh of Morocco, basically. That's the only place we know. Travel to, I'll give you an example. I went to Morocco in 2018, I think it was. I went to a city called Fez. Have you heard of that? Fez. It's a really historical city. You should put that on your list of places to visit. And in Fez, you've got the modern Fez and you've got the old city, which has still got, buildings, etc., going back 800, 900, 1,000 years. They've got a tannery there, 1,000 years old tannery. Tannery is basically, when you slaughter animals and the skin, it comes off, you then basically send it through a chemical process. All this is done by hand to cleanse and purify that skin. I actually saw this with my own eyes, that the same system they used to adopt 1,000 years ago, they still do it now. And the United Nations has declared it a heritage site. And Fez basically is a very historical place. What is inside Fez? Come on, the first what? The first what of the world, which was established by a woman. Yes. Fatima al-Fihriya, may Allah have mercy on her. She was basically the daughter of a very rich businessman. We're talking about a good few hundred years ago, before the establishment of Cambridge and Oxford. Before they got established, she inherited a lot of money from her father. Aajkal ni chokri, if she inherits money, first of all, Ferrari order kar lakhe, and you'll see her on Deepdale Road, Gostan Road, dharadam jumping up and down. Yeah, what does Fatima Fihriya do? She basically establishes a masjid, a madrasa, a university, which up to 1960 was still fully operational. Fully operational. It still is operational now, but not to the extent it was, the heydays, basically. And this is 800-900 years old. 800-900 years old. This is inside the old city of Fez. And just for your information, just to, in Fez, there is also a sheikh there, okay? His name is Abdul Rahman al-Kattani. And he must be around 95 years old. Abdul Rahman al-Kattani, Hafizahullah, may Allah preserve him, he at the moment in time holds the world's highest chain of transmission. Meaning, from him to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he has the shortest number of links. Nobody in the world as we speak possesses that unique chain of transmission. So my visit to Fez was actually to meet him and to get ijazah from him, which alhamdulillah I was very fortunate enough to be able to do. And believe me, it's not easy to meet him. It's not easy. Just before I went, some brothers from Batley, some ulama from Batley, Yorkshire had just gone there and they were not successful in seeing him. And it's a long story. I was there for a good 8-9 days, and it was only through Allah's mercy and tawfiq that I managed to see him. But he possesses the highest sanad, chain of transmission for hadith in the world, basically. So he's a unique personality. And if you ever want to research him, look up his father. His father's name is Abdul Hayy Kattani. He was a prolific author. He's authored many books. He was also a great bibliophile. However, Abdul Hayy Kattani and his entire family, they're a very influential family, the Kattani family. When the French were ruling, I know we're digressing a bit, but when the French were ruling in Morocco, Kattani family obviously opposed the colonial French rule, number one. They also opposed the puppets which the French had put up, which is the current royal family. So obviously when the French left, and the royal family assumed complete power and they were no longer the puppets of the French, what do you think they did? There was a purge, obviously. They obviously went after everyone who had opposed them in the past. So Abdul Hayy Kattani, rahimahullah, who passed away in 1962 or 63. So he had to go into exile. And he went to exile in France. And he actually passed away in France as well. He actually passed away in France as well. So at that time, his son, Abdul Rahman Kattani and others, he also had 2 daughters as well. And all his children, mashallah, were well versed. They were all scholars in their own right. People, when the daughters were alive, they used to go to France to get ijazah from them. But I think the daughters passed away around 10, 15 years ago. So they also obviously went to exile. When their father passed away, they returned to Morocco, to Fez. But till today, 2022, 50 plus years later, till today, the entire family, at least the immediate sons, children of Abdul Hayy Kattani rahimahullah, they're still under what we call house arrest. The entire family is still under house arrest. There's restrictions on them. They can't even buy and sell any property which their forefathers had owned. When we went to his house, it's a very old house, probably inherited over 100, 200 years. So one of the local brothers who was with me, he was a businessman from Fez. He goes to me, Maulana, this property must be worth in dollars, $8-9 million today. $8-9 million. It's not that they had acquired that recently. This was obviously in their family for over 100 years. But they can't sell that. They can't do anything to that because their entire family is under house arrest. And their assets are frozen. And I'll tell you something else. Abdul Hayy Kattani had a huge library of books. When I say huge library, I literally mean huge. With manuscripts and rare books. Even that, unfortunately, till today is under lock and key. The government have taken over that as well. Maybe we don't know, in the future they might release it. But coming back to this Eid, like I said, make dua that Morocco does sight the moon. So at least we can have a unified Eid on Monday. We can have a unified Eid on Monday. However, if you look at the rest of the world, you've got grey and red. Okay, red, you can't, visible with optical aid only. Optical aid is things like, there's something called, you might have heard, CCD. Now, remember, what does the hadith say? Sumu li ru'yatihi wa aftiru li ru'yatihi. It's the naked eye, not CCD, etc. With CCD imaging, etc., you can even sight the moon when it's in the phase of what we call new moon conjunction. But that doesn't count. And in Saudi Arabia, that's what some of the astronomers have started to do now. Just to justify their position, they will give you images of CCD that, look, it's there. The moon is there. Okay, we can't see it with the naked eye, but it is there. We know that it's there as well. But our criteria, the Shari'i criteria is that you need to sight it with the naked eye. So if you look at India, etc., they will definitely be doing Eid on Tuesday. But we have a slight chance, make dua, that basically Morocco is able to sight the moon. But then when you go to Monday night, it changes. On Monday night, the moon will be visible. Obviously, it was visible here on Sunday night as well, parts of America, Canada. But on Monday, it's visible everywhere, even including the UK as well, India as well, Saudi Arabia as well, basically. Now, just to finish this off, because I really want to wrap this topic up and move on, okay? Everybody, so now what you got to appreciate is, this is a very good moment to wrap up with this, that, on Monday, the moon is there, except it can only be sighted in a certain region of the world. So the moon is there. We can't sight it from other geographical locations of the world. Obviously, that moon, after a complete cycle of 24 hours, the following day, naturally, it's going to, Badri Alam, what's it going to look? Justi. Clear, and what else? What you were telling me the other day, he was asking me this question. Bigger. It's natural. If on Sunday night, the moon was sightable in a certain region of the world, okay, obviously on Monday, 24 hours later, of course that moon is going to be slightly bigger, and especially to the naked eye. Now, let me just pose a question to you, okay, to understand this issue. That if Muslims on the 29th of the month, you never saw the moon, okay? You never saw the moon, and the hadith says if you don't see the moon on the 29th, you complete 30 days, okay? So we completed 30 days. And on the 30th, you saw the moon, and you saw, Allah, it looks a bit big. So our 30th today should really have been one. It should have been the first today. We made an error yesterday. Why have people started to do that? First of all, they're going against the hadith. Sumu li ru'yatihi wa aftiru li ru'yatihi. The second thing is there will be absolute chaos if people started to use their own logic it looks bigger. So every 30th, you're going to say, we've made a mistake. This is actually the first. There will be chaos. And you are actually going against the system which has been given to you by Sharia. There will be absolute chaos. And there's also something else. That in one hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that before Qiyamah, a time will come when people will make these claims. They will say this moon, it's the moon of the second or the third. So they will look at the moon visibly with their naked eye and make this decision. This is actually a hadith. And we are actually going through that phase now. We are actually going through that phase. And believe me, this is exactly, I'll tell you from now, this is exactly what you guys, Badri Alam maybe, on Monday evening he'll be texting me, Maulsab, we've seen the moon, but okay? Yeah, it looks big. Well, I've told you from now why it will look big. Because on Sunday, it was sightable, although in one part of the world, 24 hours later, each day the moon, it travels. Okay, in its orbit, it gets bigger. More and more of the moon is revealed. And I told you those names the other day, waxing gibbous, etc. Then you have the full moon and waning and etc. etc. So I've told you from now, it will look big on Monday. And you know the answer as well now. Jazakallah subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.